What's up guys, my name is Ace, and we finally got the Modern Warfare 3 Season 1 Reloaded update. And with this, it turns out there was actually a ton of weapon balancing, including a lot of weapon balancing for the Modern Warfare 2 weapons, so a lot of them got buffed up. However, since that list is so long and I really like diving into great detail with the weapon stats when they change, I'm actually going to hold off the weapon balancing video until tomorrow. There's just no way I could get all of that together for today's video. So instead, today we're just going to be covering a lot of the miscellaneous changes and bug fixes and improvements, as well as a couple of the additions that came with this update. And the most notable additions are Rio, the brand new map, which you're seeing in the background. I'm just playing against bots for this gameplay just so I can get this information out to you guys as quickly as possible. And so you can also see what the new guns look like in action. So I'm using the SMG right here. This is the brand new SMG called the HRM9. And just in case you're confused, since it may not be entirely clear how to unlock this is actually unlocked in a brand new tier in the battle pass that they just added. So that's where you find this SMG. And then in a little bit, I'll be showing you some gameplay with the TAC Evolver, which is the LMG, which is by default 7.62, but you can just swap that to 5.56 by changing out your magazine. And that one is unlocked via this week's weekly challenge. Now, on top of that, they added Infected to the game, and it's notable that this is in the quick play filters, so I believe this may actually be a permanent addition from here on out. And then I just wanted to let you guys know that ranked play is coming, but not until this evening, it looks like. It's not coming right at the beginning of this update, and I believe the reasoning behind that is they just wanted to do some testing in the actual current build of the game, like the live build of the game, to ensure that the launch of ranked play will be nice and smooth, because it's actually pretty common for things to work just fine in their internal builds, and then the moment they push it to the live update, something breaks. And now let's get more into like the changes and fixes that came with today's update. Now, I'm not going to cover every single little bug fix. I'm mainly just going to focus on the ones that I feel are the most notable, the ones that you'll actually notice and I think are a bigger deal. And the first one is they brought that Gaia skin, or the Groot skin as a lot of people call it. They brought that back with improvements. As you can see here, they added an actual body underneath all of the tree part of the skin, whereas previously that was all invisible. And that's really what made the Gaia skin blend into the background so much, was the fact that you could see portions of the background through the skin, which would just blend that skin in. Whereas now there's a solid character model behind that, so it really shouldn't be blending in nearly as much as before. On top of that, there were just a ton of fixes within the UI, like things like unobtainable calling cards displaying in the premium category, or like various camos not working properly on certain guns, but those are all like edge case things that don't really affect the game or the gameplay at all, so I'm not going to cover every single one of those in detail. Next, they corrected a lot of inaccurate pros and cons that were displayed for several attachments, so that's great to see because sometimes the pros and cons weren't lining up with what you saw in the advanced stats, and based on the testing that I've done in the past, it's always best to go with what the advanced stats say rather than what the pros and cons say. The advanced stats always tend to be more accurate. So while that doesn't actually change how anything performs in the game, it should at least clear up some confusion that people may have had while looking at the pros and cons. Similarly, they revised several attachment descriptions to better reflect their true effects, and they addressed multiple issues with equipping a conversion kit that resulted in incompatible attachment combinations. Now, on top of that, they resolved several bugs that I actually ran into from time to time, where it would just kick you back to the main menu if you scrolled over the wrong thing in the wrong menu. So they resolved that issue when it came to viewing daily challenges that would kick some people back to the main menu, or reporting a player in another group, or resetting something to a default setting. That would sometimes kick you back to the main menu. That should be taken care of now. Now, getting into a really gameplay-specific thing, they addressed an exploit that allowed weapons to be fired faster than intended while in semi-auto, and the number one culprit for this was the DG58. A lot of people are using macros or modded controllers in order to get a ridiculous fire rate in semi-auto with that, and it was absolutely overpowered. They have now significantly reduced the fire rate cap on that in semi-auto, which is excellent to see because that was definitely broken. Next, there were a couple adjustments they made to audio. The first one is something that I found a little bit jarring and a little frustrating. This is teammate footstep audio when they're sliding or landing from a fall. For some reason, that audio would sound like an enemy footstep, which is a little bit louder than teammate footstep audio, and especially with bone conduction headset, it was a lot louder than what would be expected from a teammate's footstep, and it sounded exactly like an enemy footstep. So let's just have a listen to the change here back to back. I'm going to play the first clip, which is pre-patch with my teammate jumping next to me while I'm using bone conduction headset, and the second clip will be post-patch. And as you could probably tell, that's a huge difference. Teammates will actually sound like teammates even when landing from a fall or sliding now. Another thing they mentioned is they improved footstep audio for players walking on puddle surfaces. I did some testing pre-patch and post-patch. I couldn't really find any noticeable difference at all between pre-patch and post-patch. So my guess is in public matches, there was maybe some inconsistency with puddles, which I wasn't seeing with my really controlled testing in a private match. So perhaps they just improved the consistency there, but I can't really show you a before and after since it looks identical to me, at least, with my before and after testing. After that, let's talk a little bit about spawns. The first thing they mention in this category is enemy remote turret, wheelson, and chopper gunner kill streaks. They will now disable nearby enemy spawn points, which I think is excellent when it comes to the remote turret and the wheelson. You shouldn't be able to sit like directly on an enemy's spawn point with a wheelson or have a remote turret literally just aiming into their spawn point and killing them very shortly after they spawn. But I am a little bit confused as to why the chopper gunner is included here, since that's an aerial streak. Obviously, I want to get some playtime with this to see how this actually affects the usage of the chopper gunner, but in my opinion, the chopper gunner is already really weak, and if they make it now where the enemy spawn point is just going to be flipping all over the map if there's a chopper gunner in the air, I feel like that's going to create more issues than anything. But again, time will tell on that. The next thing I want to talk about with spawns is it looks like they have completely overhauled spawns as well as hardpoint locations for the hardpoint game mode. So hardpoint should feel like a totally different game, at least based on what the patch notes are stating. Again, when it comes to spawns, it takes some time to really get a feel for things. But I'm glad to see this, especially with the launch of ranked play. I'm sure that's why they pushed this update alongside ranked play, because the hardpoint spawns were so bad and definitely needed a lot of work. And another thing I want to say is they didn't mention anything about spawns in other modes, but a lot of the times they'll make adjustments to spawns that they don't mention in the patch notes. So this is something where I want to get some playtime with the spawns. I want to get a few gaming sessions in to see how they feel and to see if there are any improvements to the spawns across the board. One thing I will say is when I was just playing against those bots on Rio, in Team Deathmatch, the spawns seem to be extremely sticky, like way stickier than pre-patch on the other maps, but that could just be a map-specific thing with this brand new map. So again, I just need some time to really get a feel for the spawns after this update. In either case, let's move into the perks. And with Tac Mask, they mentioned that they added immunity to enemy EMP effects from the Stormender launcher. However, when I test this, at least in a custom game, that doesn't appear to be the case. You're still affected by that EMP. So perhaps this is one of those things where it only works in public matches, or perhaps this update didn't actually get pushed properly because I'm clearly still affected by an EMP and I do have Tac Mask equipped. On top of that, they addressed an issue with the Signal Jammer gear that prevented it from performing properly when combined with the Engineer Vest. Honestly, since I never really used the Signal Jammer, I don't know what that issue was, but apparently they fixed something there, so that's good news. Then getting into the equipment category, with the thermobaric grenade, they increased the minimum explosive damage. So on the outer edge of the radius, where it's not going to kill you anyway, previously this only dealt 25 damage there, whereas now it'll deal 75 damage. So it's still not going to kill you, but you will be walking away from that with less health than pre-patch. Then when it comes to field upgrades, the enemy cruise missile will no longer be targeted and destroyed by a trophy system, which is great news. I personally thought that was a little bit overkill to have a field upgrade counter a kill streak, because field upgrades, they just happen over time and you just get them by existing. Whereas kill streaks, you have to actually earn and get score and kills within the same life in order to get that. So I did find it a little bit ridiculous that a trophy system just completely nullified a kill streak. But then on top of that, with the ACS, they addressed an issue that prevented objectives from being captured in hardcore game modes. And this is something especially in hardcore hardpoint I was hearing about. Basically, the ACS just didn't work. It wouldn't capture the objective. Whereas now that should be working properly. And then finally for field upgrades, with the suppression mine, they mentioned visual effects are no longer activated for the player who deployed the mine. And again, that's a field upgrade I just never use, so I wasn't aware of this issue at all. So I honestly don't know what this looks like pre-patch versus post-patch, but apparently they did resolve an issue there. And then finally for this video, we're gonna get into the kill streak section. And with this, they very noticeably adjusted the SAM turret. And the first thing they did is they significantly reduced the lock-on delay from 3 seconds down to 2 seconds, so it should lock onto the streaks noticeably faster now. But in order to compensate for that decreased lock-on time, they did increase the cooldown a little bit between the missiles firing. So previously, it could fire a missile every 1.25 seconds, whereas now it's 1.75 seconds. So it's going to take a little bit longer between those shots. And then another thing they've done with the SAM turret is they adjusted the number of missiles required to destroy multiple kill streaks. So with the VTOL, previously it would take 3 SAM turret missiles to take one down. Now it's going to take 4. With the gunship, previously it only took 3 of these SAM turret missiles to take down a gunship, which is pretty crazy. Now it takes 5. With the chopper gunner, it was also 3 pre-patch, now it's 4. And then on top of that, previously, the SAM turret would target advanced UAVs, which I was actually unaware of. And post-patch, it will no longer target and destroy an advanced UAV. So definitely a bit of a buff to the SAM turret, but also a bit of a nerf. I would say when it comes to taking down things like UAVs and counter UAVs, the SAM turret has been just straight up buffed. But thankfully, they did consider the higher end streaks. They don't want the SAM turret to be way too powerful against high end streaks just because it's such a low end streak. So they definitely made it more difficult to shoot down the higher end streaks with a SAM turret. And honestly, I think that's great news. It sounds like the SAM turret's going to be in a much better state post-patch compared to pre-patch. Now that's not all for Killstreak adjustments. With the remote turret, there was an issue where if you died while attempting to control the turret, it would cause a bug where you couldn't then respawn and then control the remote turret. Additionally, something that's been quite frustrating is with the Overwatch Helo, shooting it down pre-patch awarded nothing. Like, you got no score toward your score streak, no XP, you got nothing for that. Now you will get score toward your streak as well as XP for shooting that streak down. Then for the EMP, when you call it in, if it destroys equipment and kill streaks, it will no longer grant you progress toward your kill streaks. And this one was a huge problem in Ground War. Previously, if you earned an EMP in Ground War modes, and then just got yourself killed, waited to respawn before calling it in, it would almost guarantee all of your streaks earned again, including another EMP, if you just called your EMP in at the beginning of your life, because it would destroy so many things, because there are so many things in Ground War. So EMPs will no longer earn you any progress toward your streaks. And then on top of that, for both the EMP and the Swarm, the announcer voice line will properly play when the enemy calls one of these in. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for all of the miscellaneous changes and bug fixes that came with this update for Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer. Like I said, there were also tons of weapon balancing changes, which I will be covering in great detail in tomorrow's video. But overall, this update's looking pretty good so far, at least on paper. Keep in mind, I try to get this video out as quickly as possible so I can just get this information in your hands as soon as possible. So I haven't really had time to sit down and grind this update. But at least on paper, it's looking really good so far. Lots of great fixes here. Also, plenty of great adjustments to various elements of the gameplay. And so far, I'm pretty happy with this, but of course, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this update so far in those comments down below. Are you generally happy with the changes and fixes that have taken place, or not so much, or have you noticed any new issues popping up in Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.